Oh, someone said Metal Gear Solid was a retro game. Yeah, because in our minds, retro is from a certain era, but retro in a lot of other terms means beyond a certain age. So as time goes on, things that are younger and younger enter into the retro era, right? Though if you call something in interior design retro, they're almost always going to assume you mean 60s and prior, sometimes 70s and prior, but they're going to think classic chrome diner, right? Things like that. Retro, maybe mod 60s, mid-century stuff. That's what's retro in their head. So for other industries, retro sometimes still is for a specific era. And I think gaming should do that. I think gaming should do what cars did. Okay. Retro means between a certain time period or before a certain time period, and it's a hard year cutoff. Not years ago, but a hard year. Like, oh, anything before 2000, let's say. Anything with graphics up to a certain point, and then it's no longer retro, right? And then what you should do is based off of time, things become classic if they're 20 years older or beyond. You know what I mean? Classic cars are any car that's older than a certain number of years. I think they should do that with games too. And then the word retro more so goes toward a certain aesthetic, time period, etc. You know what I mean? I feel like they should just separate the two and be over and done with it, so people stop calling games like Super Mario Sunshine or Pikmin retro. Because I heard someone call Pikmin 1 retro, and I was like, you should die instantly, I think, and laser beams came out of my eyes. I was just like, you can't do that. You can't do that to my Pikmin, okay? No. Grouping stuff like NES and 360 is both retros too much. Yeah, it's too much of a gap. Personally, to me, anything before 3D graphics is definitely retro. And then I would say N64 and PS1 is like its own era because it was them trying to figure out 3D, and they play in a really interesting, really weird way because of it. Like the camera is also a little awkward in a lot of N64 games, whatever. And then when you get to PS2 and beyond, you're still in older looking 3D, but it was a little more figured out by then. So the way the games play and the way they feel as far as how cameras move and all of that. Honestly, how the games are coded to handle that type of data was a lot different. So I feel like that's the era beyond that, right? So it's like retro, which is not quite moving into 3D yet. Maybe 3D, but they're usually isometric games or top down still, even if it had 3D graphics. That's retro. And then there's this in-between period that I don't know what to call it, where it's early 3D, still jank, still using a lot of code that kind of is reminiscent of a lot of 2D gaming. It's a little weird. And then PS2 and like GameCube, you know, where they really figured it out. Yeah, pre-3D, early 3D, and then I wouldn't say HD, but something else. But yeah, you get the divide, right? We've reached the point where the time gap between N64 and NES is smaller than now, and Xbox 360. I think GameCube is sadly retro. No, but don't do it with expanding and shrinking time gaps is what I'm saying. Just do it like eras. Just do generations. So easy. So easy. Oh, you're boomer. Oh, you're Gen X. Oh, you're millennial. Do the same thing with gaming. Just name them or something. Categorize them by what they have in common and what the major technological changes were, and boom, there you go. The retro era, the classic era, the early 3D era, the whatever, you know, whatever you want to call them. You know what? I'll just make an infographic that separates them and says why, and then put it on the internet and let people complain about it on Twitter and argue about it and farm all that engagement or something. I should just do that. Know what I mean? Make it look like the Zelda timeline where they all branch off.